Welcome to Shadows of the Marquis. Shadows of the Marquis is a sanctuary for lovers of intense and dramatic historical romance. Here, you'll find narrated stories that explore arranged marriages, forbidden loves, secret passions, and the eternal struggle between duty and heart. With aristocratic settings, complex characters, and raw emotions, each video transports you to a world of luxury, secrets, and redemption, where disdain can turn into desire, and love has the power to change destinies. If you're passionate about Victorian dramas, Regency plots, and immersive narratives worthy of historical novels, this is the place for you. Tonight, we bring you a tale of impossible choices and forbidden devotion. In the frozen winter of 1818, Duke Sebastian Thornwell, heir to one of England's most powerful and ruthless families, discovers something that will shatter everything he was raised to believe. Lady Isolde Ashford, the abandoned bride of his family's mortal enemy, lies dying in the snow on his estate grounds, cast out on her own wedding night and left to freeze as a pawn in a vicious blood feud that has raged for 3 generations. The moment Sebastian lifts her unconscious body from the frozen earth, he commits the ultimate betrayal against his own lineage. But as this beautiful enemy recovers in the secret wing of his manor, he will discover that the woman he was taught to despise holds something far more dangerous than any family secret. She holds his heart. This is a story of love born from hatred, of loyalty shattered by compassion, and of 2 souls who must choose between the world that raised them and the love that could destroy them both. Will Sebastian honor the blood that flows through his veins, or will he protect the woman who has awakened feelings he never thought possible? Stay until the very end to discover how far one man will go to betray everything for love. The wind howled like a wounded beast across the frozen grounds of Thornwell Hall, carrying with it the kind of cold that seeped into bones and froze tears before they could fall. Duke Sebastian Thornwell urged his midnight black stallion forward through the blizzard, his steel-blue eyes narrowed against the stinging snow. He shouldn't have been out here at all, not on a night when even the wolves sought shelter, but something had driven him from his study, some restless pull he couldn't name. His dark greatcoat whipped around him like shadows given form as he rode past the frozen lake, past the bare willow trees that clawed at the grey sky like skeletal fingers. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was a ghost, some trick of moonlight on snow. A figure in white lay crumpled against the base of an ancient willow, so still she might have been carved from ice itself. Sebastian's heart, that organ he'd trained to be as cold as the winter surrounding him, stuttered in his chest. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots crunching on the frozen ground as he approached. The closer he came, the more impossible the scene became. It was a woman, dressed in what had once been an elegant wedding gown, now torn and mud-stained and soaked through with melted snow. Her auburn hair spilled across the white ground like spilled wine, and her skin had taken on the translucent quality of fine porcelain about to shatter. Sebastian dropped to his knees beside her, his gloved hand reaching for her throat to find a pulse. It was there, faint as a whisper, fragile as hope. He should have left her. Every lesson drilled into him since childhood, every oath sworn at his father's deathbed, every drop of Thornwell blood in his veins screamed at him to turn away. Let the enemy freeze. Let the Ashfords reap what they had sown. The feud between their houses had already claimed too many lives, destroyed too many futures. One more death would barely register in that long ledger of hatred. But then her eyes fluttered open just for a heartbeat, and Sebastian found himself staring into the most luminous emerald green he had ever seen. Those eyes held no malice, no cunning, no trace of the enemy he had been taught to despise. They held only pain, confusion, and a terrible, desperate fear. In that instant, something fundamental shifted in Sebastian Thornwell's carefully constructed world. He gathered her into his arms, and she was so light it terrified him, as if she were already halfway to becoming a ghost. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and he could feel the violent shivers racking her body through the thin, wet fabric of her ruined wedding dress. Questions could wait. Explanations could wait. Right now she was dying, and he was the only thing standing between her and the frozen oblivion, reaching for her with icy fingers. Sebastian carried her to his horse, mounted with practiced ease despite his burden, and turned toward Thornwell Hall. As the great manor loomed before him through the snow, its Gothic spires piercing the night sky like accusations, he knew he was crossing a line from which there could be no return. The moment he carried an Ashford through those doors, he became a traitor to his own blood. Martha Wren, his housekeeper, met him at the servants' entrance with wide eyes and a sharp intake of breath. She had served the Thornwell family for 30 years and knew exactly what the woman in his arms represented. Sebastian's voice was low and commanding, brooking no argument. "The East Wing, the Blue Room. No one can know she's here, Martha. No one. My mother especially." Mrs. Wren hesitated for only a heartbeat before nodding. Whatever else she was loyal to Sebastian, not to the family's ancient hatreds. Together they spirited the unconscious woman through hidden passages and up forgotten staircases to the isolated east wing of the manor, a section that hadn't been opened in years. The Blue Room was dusty but elegant, with a massive four-poster bed draped in deep blue velvet and tall windows overlooking the frozen gardens. Sebastian laid her gently on the bed while Mrs. Wren rushed to build a fire in the ornate fireplace. As warmth slowly filled the room and candlelight pushed back the shadows, Sebastian finally allowed himself to truly look at the woman he had saved. Even in her current state, she was breathtaking, with that ethereal, almost pre-Raphaelite beauty that seemed to belong to another age entirely. Her wedding dress, he now noticed, had been fine once, expensive, crafted for a bride of high standing, but it had been torn deliberately, viciously, as if someone had wanted to destroy not just the garment but the woman wearing it. There was a faint bruise blooming on her left temple, and her hands, when he took them to rub warmth back into them, were scraped and bleeding, as if she had crawled through rough terrain. What had happened to her? Why had she been left to die on his lands of all places? Mrs. Wren returned with hot water, clean linens, and one of the nightgowns that had belonged to Sebastian's late sister. "I'll tend to her, Your Grace," she said quietly, but Sebastian found himself reluctant to leave. "Who is she, Martha?" he asked, though he already knew the answer in his bones. Mrs. Wren's expression was grim as she began carefully removing the wet, ruined wedding dress. "That's Lady Isolde Ashford, my lord. I'd recognize that hair anywhere. Her mother had the same shade before she passed, and that broken locket around her neck, that's the Ashford family heirloom." Sebastian's jaw tightened. Isolde Ashford, daughter of the house that had killed his father in a duel 10 years ago over a disputed land claim, granddaughter of the man who had destroyed his uncle's reputation with lies and slander. She was everything he should hate, everything he had been raised to destroy. And yet, looking at her now, all he felt was a fierce, protective rage at whoever had left her to freeze to death. Why would someone abandon her like this? He asked aloud, more to himself than to Martha. The housekeeper's lips pressed into a thin line as she worked. "I heard rumours in the village yesterday, Your Grace. Lady Isolde was to marry Lord Nathaniel Ashford, her distant cousin, in a match arranged to unite two branches of the family. But there was a scandal at the wedding. Something about documents proving the marriage contract was a forgery, that Lord Nathaniel was already married in secret. The ceremony collapsed into chaos, and Lady Isolde, being the most vulnerable party and a woman, was blamed for somehow orchestrating the deception to trap Lord Nathaniel. Her own family cast her out to save face." Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. "They left her to die for a crime she didn't commit." Martha nodded gravely. "Worse, my lord. I heard they dumped her on Thornwell lands deliberately, hoping your family would be blamed for her death. It would reignite the feud tenfold and give the Ashfords justification for new attacks on your holdings." The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Isolde had been turned into a weapon, a sacrificial pawn in a game of hatred that predated her birth. And Sebastian, by saving her, had just removed that weapon from the board and turned it into a shield against his own family. If his mother, the Dowager Duchess Helena Thornwell, discovered an Ashford was being sheltered under her roof, there would be hell to pay. Sebastian stood, his decision crystallizing like ice, forming on a winter window. "Keep her hidden, Martha. Tell no one. I'll manage my mother." He paused at the door, looking back at the unconscious woman now dressed in a clean white nightgown, her copper hair spread across the pillows like living flame. "And Martha, make sure she lives, whatever it costs." Over the next 3 days, Sebastian became a man divided. By day, he played the role expected of him, the cold, dutiful Duke of Thornwell, attending to estate business and enduring his mother's endless lectures about upholding family honor and crushing the Ashfords once and for all. By night, he slipped through hidden passages to the East Wing, where Isolde drifted in and out of fevered consciousness. He sat beside her bed in the candlelight, watching her struggle against nightmares, listening to her whisper fragments of memories in her delirium. She spoke of a wedding that turned into a nightmare, of being dragged from the church by her own brother, of being thrown from a carriage into the snow and told she was dead to her family. She spoke her mother's name with such longing it made Sebastian's chest ache. And once, just once, she opened those devastating green eyes and looked directly at him. "Are you Death?" she whispered, her voice raw and broken. Sebastian found himself reaching for her hand, his thumb brushing over her scraped knuckles with a gentleness that surprised him. "No," he said quietly, "I'm the man who found you." On the 4th night, Isolde woke fully. Sebastian was there, as he had been every night, reading by the firelight in the chair he'd pulled beside her bed. He looked up at the sound of her stirring and found her watching him with clear, aware eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Isolde's gaze travelled around the unfamiliar room, taking in the blue velvet bed curtains, the crackling fire, the elegant furniture. When her eyes returned to Sebastian, there was understanding there, and fear. "Where am I?" Her voice was still hoarse, but stronger than before. Sebastian closed his book slowly, giving her time to adjust. "Thornwell Hall." He watched her stiffen, saw the flash of panic cross her delicate features. "You're safe here, Lady Isolde. No one knows you're here except myself and my housekeeper, and it will stay that way." Isolde struggled to sit up, and Sebastian was on his feet immediately, adjusting pillows behind her back with a care that seemed to surprise them both. When she was settled, she looked at him with those luminous eyes that haunted his dreams. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question. "I know who your family is," Sebastian corrected, settling back into his chair but remaining tense, ready to catch her if she tried to stand and fell. "I know what was done to you, and I know that whatever sins your ancestors committed, you don't deserve to freeze to death for them." Isolde's hand went to her throat, where her broken locket still hung. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back with fierce pride. "Why would a Thornwell save an Ashford? We've been enemies for generations. Your family has every reason to want me dead." Sebastian leaned forward, his steel blue eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Because I'm not my father, and you're not your grandfather. Because hatred passed down like an inheritance is still just hatred, and I'm tired of paying interest on debts I didn't incur." The silence that fell between them was heavy with possibility, with danger, with something neither dared name. Finally, Isolde spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your family will never forgive you for this. If they find out, they'll see it as the ultimate betrayal." A ghost of a smile touched Sebastian's stern mouth. "Then we'll have to make sure they don't find out." Over the following weeks, an impossible routine developed. Isolde recovered slowly in the hidden wing, her strength returning day by day under Mrs. Wren's care and Sebastian's watchful protection. She spent her days reading from the extensive library Sebastian smuggled to her room, gazing out at the frozen gardens and healing not just from the physical ordeal, but from the emotional wounds of being utterly abandoned by everyone she had ever known. At night, Sebastian came to her. At first, he told himself it was merely to check on her recovery, to ensure she had everything she needed. But as the nights accumulated, he could no longer deny the truth. He came because being with Isolde was the only time he felt truly alive, the only time the ice around his heart began to thaw. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's death when she was 12, about the weight of being a daughter in a house obsessed with male heirs and ancient grudges. He told her about his father's death in the duel, about the impossible expectations placed on him as the last Thornwell male, about the loneliness of being raised to hate half the world. Slowly, carefully, they built a bridge between their two worlds, a fragile connection formed of honesty and understanding, and something that felt dangerously like hope. And then one night, as snow fell soft and silent outside the window, something shifted. Sebastian had brought her a new book, a volume of poetry he thought she might enjoy. As he handed it to her, their fingers touched, and neither pulled away. Isolde looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw his own struggle reflected back at him, the war between what they should feel and what they actually felt. "Sebastian," she whispered, using his given name for the first time, and the sound of it on her lips nearly undid him. He knelt beside her chair by the fire, taking her hands in his. "I know this is impossible," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know every reason we shouldn't, all the history that stands between us. But Isolde, when I look at you, I don't see an enemy. I see the woman who made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty and honor and duty. I see the person who taught me that sometimes the greatest betrayal is betraying your own heart." Isolde's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Your family, if they knew, they'll never forgive me," Sebastian finished. "I know. My mother will see it as the ultimate treachery. I'll lose everything I was raised to protect, everyone who ever claimed to care for me. But Isolde, I've already betrayed my lineage the moment I chose to save you instead of let you freeze. There's no going back from this. The only question is whether we move forward together or whether we let fear steal what we've found." He reached up, cupping her face with a gentleness that belied his warrior's hands. "I don't know what the future holds. I can't promise you safety or acceptance or even survival, but I can promise you this. As long as there's breath in my body, you will never be abandoned again. You will never be left in the cold. You will never be alone." Isolde's tears finally spilled over, tracking down her cheeks like liquid diamonds in the firelight. "I was taught to hate you," she whispered. "Everything about you, everything you represent. But you've shown me more compassion, more genuine care in these few weeks than my own family showed me in 24 years. Their faces were so close now, Sebastian could feel her breath against his lips. "Then forget what you were taught," he murmured. "Forget the hate. Forget the names and the history and the blood feuds. Just be Isolde, and let me be Sebastian. Two people who found each other in the snow and chose warmth over the cold. When their lips finally met, it was like the breaking of winter, like spring's first thaw after an endless freeze. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of the power of what they were creating. But then Isolde's hands slid into Sebastian's dark hair, and his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and the gentleness gave way to passion, to desperate need, to the kind of kiss that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, foreheads resting together, Sebastian knew there was no turning back. He had crossed every line, betrayed every oath, chosen love over lineage, and he would do it again in a heartbeat. But their stolen paradise couldn't last forever. 3 days after that first kiss, Sebastian's mother returned early from a visit to the neighboring county. Dowager Duchess Helena Thornwell swept into Thornwell Hall like an ice storm given human form, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back severely, her blue eyes, so like her son's but infinitely colder, missing nothing. Over dinner that evening, she studied Sebastian with the intensity of a hawk watching a mouse. "You seem different, Sebastian," she said, her voice deceptively mild as she cut into her venison with surgical precision. "Distracted, almost content. It's disconcerting." Sebastian kept his expression neutral, years of training serving him well. "I've simply been managing the estate, Mother, nothing more." Helena set down her knife and fork with deliberate care. "Nothing more? How curious, because I've been hearing the most interesting rumors from the village." Sebastian's blood ran cold, but he forced himself to meet her gaze steadily. "Rumors are just that, Mother. Village gossip has no place at this table." She smiled, and it was like watching frost form on glass. "Even when those rumors concern Lady Isolde Ashford? Even when they suggest she didn't die in the snow as her family claimed? Even when they whisper that someone in this very house has been seen entering the East Wing, a section that's supposedly closed?" The silence that fell over the dining room was absolute. Sebastian could hear his own heartbeat, thunderous in his ears. He had been so careful, had taken every precaution, but Helena Thornwell hadn't ruled this house through 3 decades by being blind or stupid. She leaned back in her chair, studying him with those merciless eyes. "Bring her to me." It wasn't a request. "Mother," Sebastian began, but Helena cut him off with a gesture as sharp as a blade. "Now, Sebastian, or I will have the servants search every room in this manor until they find her, and you know I will do it." Sebastian's hands clenched beneath the table, every muscle in his body coiled for a fight he couldn't win through force. Slowly, he stood. "If I bring her to you, you will speak to her civilly. You will hear what I have to say, and you will remember that I am the Duke of Thornwell now, not you." Helena's smile widened, turning predatory. "Oh, my dear boy, bring me the Ashford bride, and we'll see exactly who rules this house." 20 minutes later, Sebastian entered the blue room to find Isolde standing by the window, dressed in a simple grey gown Mrs. Wren had provided. She turned at his entrance, and the fear in her eyes when she saw his expression nearly broke him. "She knows," Isolde whispered. It wasn't a question. Sebastian crossed to her, taking her hands. "My mother demands to see you. I won't let her hurt you, Isolde. Whatever happens, whatever she says, know that you're under my protection." Isolde's laugh was bitter, heartbreaking. "I'm an Ashford in a Thornwell house, Sebastian. Your protection means sacrificing everything you've worked for, everyone who depends on you. I can't let you do that." He pulled her close, pressing a fierce kiss to her forehead. "You don't get to decide what I sacrifice. That's my choice to make." Together they walked through the hidden passages and down to the grand hall, where Helena waited like a queen on her throne. The Dowager Duchess's eyes widened fractionally when she saw Isolde, taking in the copper hair, the emerald eyes, the delicate beauty that seemed so at odds with the Ashford reputation for cruelty. Then her expression hardened into stone. "So it's true," Helena said, her voice cutting through the vast space like a whipcrack. "My own son, harboring the enemy, hiding an Ashford under my roof. Have you completely lost your mind, Sebastian?" Sebastian stood tall, his hand firmly clasped around Isolde's, a declaration in itself. "I saved a woman who was left to die, Mother. That's what I did. Whatever her name is, whatever family she comes from, she was innocent and abandoned, and I refuse to be the kind of man who could walk away from that." Helena's laugh was cold, utterly devoid of humor. "Innocent? An Ashford? Their family killed your father, destroyed your uncle, has spent 3 generations trying to annihilate our line, and you dare call one of them innocent?" She turned her icy gaze on Isolde. "What lies did you fill his head with, girl? What manipulation convinced him to betray his own blood?" Isolde's chin lifted with a dignity that made Sebastian's heart swell with pride. "I told him nothing but the truth, Your Grace. I didn't ask to be saved. I didn't ask for any of this. But your son chose compassion over hatred, and that makes him a better person than either of our families have produced in generations." The slap came so fast even Sebastian didn't see it coming. Helena's hand cracked across Isolde's cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side, and Sebastian's roar of fury shook the very walls of Thornwell Hall. He stepped between them instantly, putting himself as a shield in front of Isolde, and when he spoke, his voice was absolutely lethal. "You will never touch her again. Do you understand me, mother? Never." Helena stared at her son as if seeing a stranger. "You would choose her over your own mother, over the family that raised you, that made you what you are?" Sebastian's steel-blue eyes blazed with a light Helena had never seen before. "You made me a man trapped in ice, mother. You made me a weapon of your hatred, a tool for continuing a war I never chose to fight. She made me human again. So yes, I choose her. I choose love over vengeance. I choose the future over the rotting corpse of the past." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Helena spoke, and her words fell like an executioner's axe. "Then you are no son of mine. You are no Thornwell. I will see you stripped of your title, your lands, everything. I will make sure the entire realm knows you're a traitor to your own blood, and that girl will pay the price for seducing you away from your duty." She turned to leave, her silver-streaked hair glinting in the candlelight like cold metal. "Guards!" she called out. "Seize the Ashford woman. We'll send her back to her family in pieces as a message of what happens to their kind in Thornwell territory." But Sebastian was already moving. In one fluid motion, he drew the sword that hung over the mantel, the blade that had belonged to his father. The guards who rushed into the hall stopped dead at the sight of their duke, armed and clearly willing to fight. "Anyone who touches her goes through me first," Sebastian said, his voice deadly calm. "And I promise you, I'm my father's son in at least one way. I know how to use this blade." Helena's face went white with rage. "You would draw steel against your own family's men? For an Ashford? Sebastian, this is madness." He laughed, and it was the sound of chains breaking, of ice cracking, of a man finally free. "No, mother. Madness was hating for so long I forgot what it felt like to care for someone. Madness was thinking duty meant destroying my own capacity for love. This is the sanest thing I've ever done." He turned to Isolde, extending his hand even while keeping the sword raised toward the guards. "Isolde, will you leave with me? Will you walk away from all of this, from the safety and the wealth and the names that have defined us, and choose something new, something real?" Isolde was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face as she looked at this man who was willing to give up everything for her. "Sebastian, they'll hunt us. Both our families will want us dead." "I know." His smile was fierce, wild, beautiful. "But we'll be together. And I'd rather spend one honest day with you than a lifetime in this gilded cage of hatred." Isolde placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining with a certainty that felt like destiny. "Then yes, wherever you go, I go. Whoever you choose to be, I'll be beside you." Sebastian turned back to his mother one last time. "Consider this my formal resignation from the House of Thornwell. You can have the title, the lands, the endless cycle of vengeance. I'm taking something far more valuable." He looked down at Isolde, and his voice softened. "I'm taking love." They ran. Through the secret passages Sebastian knew by heart, out through the servants' quarters, into the stables where Sebastian's fastest horses waited. Behind them, they could hear Helena's screams of rage, the guards mobilizing, the entire household erupting into chaos. But Sebastian was already lifting Isolde onto his midnight black stallion, climbing up behind her, his arms wrapping around her as they exploded out of the stables and into the night. The same frozen landscape that had nearly killed Isolde weeks ago now became their path to freedom. Sebastian guided the horse with expert skill, taking routes through the forest that only he knew, paths his father had shown him as a boy when teaching him to hunt. Isolde leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady against her spine, and for the first time in her life she felt utterly safe. They rode through the night and into the dawn, putting miles between themselves and Thornwell Hall. When they finally stopped in a small village near the Scottish border, Sebastian rented a room at a modest inn under false names. As they stood together in that simple room, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and each other, Isolde turned to face him. "You gave up everything for me," she said, her voice breaking. "Your title, your fortune, your family name. Sebastian, what have we done?" He cupped her face in his hands, brushing away her tears with his thumbs. "We've chosen each other, Isolde. That's what we've done. And it's the only choice that matters." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We'll build a new life, somewhere they can't find us. We'll be nobody and everybody all at once. Just Sebastian and Isolde, two people who found each other in the cold and chose warmth." Isolde smiled through her tears. "And love?" He smiled back. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his stern face into something breathtaking. "And love, always love." Outside the window, the winter sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The snow was beginning to melt, and somewhere in the distance, spring was coming. Sebastian and Isolde stood together in that simple room, holding each other as the old world fell away and a new one began. They had betrayed their lineages, abandoned their birthrights, and turned their backs on generations of hatred. In exchange, they had gained something infinitely more precious. They had gained each other, and they had gained the freedom to love without the weight of the past crushing them. Months later, in a small cottage in the Scottish Highlands, far from both Thornwell Hall and Ashford Manor, Sebastian stood at the window watching Isolde in the garden. She was planting roses, her copper hair shining in the summer sun, her laughter ringing out pure and free as she scolded him for tracking mud into her clean house earlier. They had married in a tiny village church, with no one but the local minister and his wife as witnesses. No grand ceremony, no aristocratic guests, no family politics. Just two people in love, making vows that mattered. Sebastian still received occasional letters from Mrs. Wren, delivered through a complex network of trusted messengers. She wrote that Helena had indeed stripped him of his title in absentia, declaring him dead to the family. The Ashfords, learning that Isolde lived and had run away with the Thornwell, had disowned her completely. Both families had issued bounties for their capture, each wanting to punish the ultimate betrayal. But Sebastian and Isolde were ghosts now, living under new names, finding joy in simplicity. He worked as a horse trainer, his aristocratic skills with animals translating well to humble work. She taught reading to the village children, her education put to use in ways her family would have scorned, and every night they fell asleep in each other's arms, grateful beyond measure for the love that had saved them both. One evening, as they sat by the fire in their cottage, Isolde resting her head on Sebastian's shoulder, she spoke softly. "Do you ever regret it? Everything you gave up?" Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his fingers gently stroking her hair. Then he turned her face up to his steel blue eyes warm with absolute certainty. "Isolde, I spent 32 years as a prisoner of my own name, locked in a war I didn't start and couldn't end. I had wealth and power and a legacy stretching back centuries, and I was empty, completely, utterly empty." He kissed her forehead tenderly. "Then I found you freezing in the snow, and everything changed. You gave me a reason to question, to feel, to choose my own path. You gave me love when I thought my heart was too frozen to ever thaw. So no, my darling, I regret nothing. This life, this cottage, this simple existence with you, this is the only title I ever want. Being yours." Isolde's eyes filled with tears of joy. "I was abandoned by everyone who was supposed to love me, Sebastian, left to die like I meant nothing. And then you, a man who should have been my enemy, you saw me, you chose me, you saved me in every way a person can be saved." She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat. "I would choose this life 1,000 times over. I would choose you every time." Outside, The Scottish hills rolled green and golden under the evening sun. Inside, Sebastian and Isolde held each other. Two souls who had found home not in grand manners or ancient names, but in each other's arms. The feud between Thornwell and Ashford would continue, no doubt, grinding on through generations like a machine no one remembered how to stop. But Sebastian and Isolde had stepped off that bloody carousel. They had chosen love over loyalty to hatred. They had chosen each other over the expectations of an entire world, and in doing so, they had won the only victory that truly mattered. Years later, when their children played in the garden of that Scottish cottage, laughing without the weight of family feuds on their small shoulders, Sebastian would sometimes think about that winter night when he found Isolde in the snow. It had been the moment his real life began, the moment he stopped being just a duke, just a Thornwell, just a weapon of ancestral rage, the moment he became a man who could love, and love, he had learned, was the most powerful form of betrayal. Because when you truly love someone, you betray the hatreds and prejudices and cruelties that came before. You choose to be better. You choose to be different. You choose to be free. But peace, Sebastian and Isolde would learn, was never guaranteed to last forever. 5 years into their idyllic Scottish exile, on a crisp autumn morning when the heather bloomed purple across the hills, a rider came thundering up the path to their cottage. Sebastian was in the stable, brushing down the horses, when he heard Isolde's sharp cry of alarm. He dropped everything and ran, his heart pounding with a fear he hadn't felt since that night they fled Thornwell Hall. When he burst through the cottage door, he found Isolde standing frozen in the kitchen, her face pale as death, clutching a letter with the Thornwell seal broken open in her trembling hands. Their 3-year-old daughter, Eleanor, with her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes, clung to Isolde's skirts, sensing her mother's distress. "What is it?" Sebastian demanded, crossing to them in 3 long strides. Isolde looked up at him, and the devastation in her eyes made his blood run cold. "It's from Mrs. Wren," she whispered. "Sebastian, your mother is dying. She has perhaps a week left, maybe less. Some kind of fever the physicians can't cure. But she held out the letter with shaking hands. "She's asking for you. She wants to see you before she dies." Sebastian took the letter, scanning Mrs. Wren's careful handwriting. The housekeeper had written that Helena Thornwell, once so formidable and terrifying, had been brought low by illness. In her delirium, she called for Sebastian constantly, weeping his name, begging forgiveness. The doctors had done all they could. It was only a matter of time now. Sebastian crushed the letter in his fist, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. "She disowned me, declared me dead, sent men to hunt us down like animals." Isolde placed a gentle hand on his arm, her touch grounding him as it always did. "She's still your mother, Sebastian. Whatever else she's done, she gave you life. She raised you, and she's dying." Her voice broke on the last word. "I know what it's like to lose a mother, to have words left unsaid forever. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, not even on someone who wanted me dead." Sebastian looked down at his daughter, who was watching him with those impossibly wise eyes children sometimes have. Eleanor didn't know about Thornwell Hall, about the feud, about the grandmothers on both sides who had wanted her parents destroyed. She knew only the love of 2 parents who cherished her, and the simple beauty of their Highland home. "If I go back," Sebastian said slowly, "there's a chance I won't return. The bounty on my head is still active. The Ashfords still want me dead for stealing you away. Even some of my own family members might see this as an opportunity for vengeance." Isolde's hand tightened on his arm. "Then we go together, all of us, as a family." Sebastian started to protest, but she cut him off with a look that reminded him exactly why he'd fallen in love with her. "You are not facing your demons alone, Sebastian Thornwell. We made vows. Wherever you go, I go. That includes back into the dragon's den if necessary." So they made preparations quickly, urgently. Sebastian sent a coded message ahead to Mrs. Wren, asking her to arrange safe passage into Thornwell Hall through the old servants' corridors. They packed light, dressed Eleanor warmly, and as the sun set on their peaceful cottage, they began the long journey south. The trip took 4 days of hard riding, with little Eleanor proving remarkably resilient for such a small child. They stopped at inns Sebastian knew to be discreet, always using false names, always watching for anyone who might recognize them. As they drew closer to Thornwell Hall, Sebastian felt the past closing around him like a vice. The landscape grew familiar in a way that made his chest tight. There was the old mill where he'd played as a boy. There was the bridge where he'd had his first fencing lesson. Every landmark was a ghost of the man he used to be, the life he'd left behind. They arrived at Thornwell Hall on the 5th night. Approaching from the east, through the forest, Sebastian knew by heart. Mrs. Wren was waiting at the hidden servant's door, her kind face lined with new worry and old grief. She embraced Sebastian fiercely, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You came," she whispered. "I wasn't sure you would." Then she looked at Isolde and little Eleanor, and her expression softened with wonder. "And you brought your family. My lord, she's beautiful. She has your eyes, Lady Isolde." Eleanor, shy but curious, peeked out from behind Isolde's skirts. Mrs. Wren knelt down with a grandmother's instinct. "Hello, little one. I'm Martha. I've known your papa since he was younger than you." Eleanor considered this gravely, then offered a small smile. "Papa says we're visiting someone sick. Can we help make them better?" The innocence of the question brought fresh tears to Mrs. Wren's eyes. "Oh, darling child, you already have just by being here." She stood, her expression turning serious. "We must hurry. The Dowager Duchess is in her chambers. She's been asking for you constantly, my lord, but you should know. Lord Nathaniel Ashford arrived yesterday." Sebastian's entire body went rigid. Nathaniel Ashford? The man who abandoned Isolde on their wedding night? What in God's name is he doing here? Mrs. Wren's face was grim. "He came claiming he wanted to pay respects, but I think he heard rumors you might return. He's been watching the entrances like a hawk. He has 3 men with him, all armed." Isolde's hand found Sebastian's, squeezing tight. "He still blames me for the scandal that destroyed his reputation," she said quietly. "He swore he'd see me dead for it, never mind that he was the one who was already married when he tried to marry me." Sebastian's protective instincts flared hot and fierce. "He's not touching you, not while I have breath in my body." He turned to Mrs. Wren. "Can you get us to my mother's chambers without being seen?" The housekeeper nodded. "Follow me. Stay close and stay quiet." They moved through the hidden passages of Thornwell Hall like ghosts, Eleanor held safely in Sebastian's arms, Isolde's hand gripping his coat. The manor was exactly as Sebastian remembered, cold and imposing, full of shadows and the weight of history. Finally, they reached the Dowager Duchess's chambers. Mrs. Wren knocked softly, then opened the door. The room was dim, lit only by a few candles and a dying fire. In the massive bed lay Helena Thornwell, and Sebastian barely recognized her. The formidable woman who had ruled Thornwell Hall with an iron will was now a fragile shadow, her silver-streaked hair dull against the pillows, her skin the color of old parchment. But when she heard the door open, her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw Sebastian, a sound escaped her that was half sob, half prayer. "Sebastian," she whispered, her voice a broken rasp. "You came. I feared you'd let me die alone, and I would deserve it. God knows I would deserve it." Sebastian approached the bed slowly, feeling as if he were walking through a dream. Isolde stayed back with Eleanor, giving him this moment with his mother. He sat in the chair beside the bed, and Helena's trembling hand reached for his. He let her take it, feeling how cold her skin was, how weak her grip. "I'm here, Mother," he said, and his voice was thick with emotions he couldn't name. Helena's eyes, still that piercing Thornwell blue, but now dimmed with illness and regret, searched his face hungrily. "You look well, happy. I never thought I'd see you look so at peace." Her gaze moved past him to where Isolde stood with Eleanor. "Is that her, the Ashford girl?" Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Her name is Isolde, and that's our daughter, Eleanor." Helena was quiet for a long moment, tears sliding down her hollow cheeks. She's beautiful. They both are. She gripped Sebastian's hand tighter, urgent now. I was wrong, Sebastian. About everything. The hatred, the feud, all of it. I've spent these last weeks dying, and all I could think about was what a waste it all was. What a terrible, senseless waste. She struggled to sit up more, and Sebastian gently helped her, adjusting the pillows. Your father died in that duel over land neither family even uses anymore. My brother-in-law was destroyed over a lie that's been forgotten by everyone except us. And I lost my only son because I couldn't see past the rage that was eating me alive from the inside. Fresh tears fell. I drove you away. I lost years with you. I'll never meet my granddaughter properly, all because I was too proud and too hateful to admit that maybe, just maybe, love was more important than vengeance. Sebastian found his own eyes burning with tears. Mother, Helena cut him off with a weak gesture. No, let me finish. I don't have much time, and I need to say this. I need you to hear it. She took a shaky breath. You were right to save her. You were right to choose love. You showed more courage in that one act than I've shown in my entire life. You broke the chains I tried to bind you with, and instead of being proud of the strong, compassionate man you became, I tried to destroy you for it. She looked past Sebastian to Isolde. Lady Isolde, would you come here, please? Isolde hesitated, then moved forward, Eleanor's hand clasped in hers. She stood beside Sebastian, and Helena studied them together, this family born from defiance and devotion. I'm so deeply sorry for what I did to you, child, Helena said, her voice breaking. For the slap, for the cruelty, for trying to have you killed. You did nothing to deserve any of it, except have the misfortune of being born into the wrong family. Can you ever forgive a bitter old woman who let hate poison her soul? Isolde's eyes filled with tears. Your Grace, She paused, then seemed to make a decision. My own family tried to kill me too. They left me in the snow to freeze. If I've learned anything from all of this, it's that holding on to anger only destroys the person carrying it. So yes, I forgive you. Helena sobbed openly now, clutching Sebastian's hand like a lifeline. Thank you. Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you. She looked at Eleanor, who was watching with wide, curious eyes. Come here, little one. Come let your grandmother see you properly. Eleanor looked up at Isolde, who nodded encouragingly. The child approached the bed with the fearlessness of innocence, and Helena's face transformed with wonder as she looked at her granddaughter. What's your name, darling? Helena asked softly. Eleanor, the little girl said clearly. I'm 3.5 years old, and I can read 6 words. Helena's laugh was watery but genuine. 6 words. That's wonderful. You're brilliant, just like your father was at your age. She looked back at Sebastian. Tell me about your life, please. I want to know everything I've missed. So Sebastian talked. He told her about the cottage in the Highlands, about his work with horses, about Isolde teaching the village children. He told her about Eleanor's birth, about the community they'd built, about the simple joys of a life lived without the weight of legacy crushing them. Helena listened to every word, drinking it in like someone dying of thirst. When he finished, she was smiling despite her tears. You found happiness, Sebastian. Real happiness. That's all a mother should want for her child, and I was too blind to see it. But then her expression changed, becoming urgent and afraid. Sebastian, you need to leave. Tonight. Lord Nathaniel Ashford is here, and he's not alone. He brought mercenaries. I heard him talking to one of my advisors, promising gold if they help him capture Lady Isolde. He wants revenge for the scandal, wants to take her back to Ashford Manor for a trial that will be nothing but her execution. Sebastian was on his feet instantly, his warrior instincts blazing to life. How many men? Helena coughed, wincing with pain. At least 6, maybe more. They're armed and they're searching the manor. It's only a matter of time before they find this room. She grabbed Sebastian's hand with surprising strength. There's something else. Before I got sick, I wrote a new will. I left everything to you, Sebastian. The title, the lands, all of it. I had it witnessed and sealed properly. It's in my desk, locked drawer. The key is around my neck. She pulled out a small brass key on a chain. Take it. Take everything. Use the Thornwell wealth to protect your family, to build something better than what I built. End this feud once and for all." Sebastian stared at the key, overwhelmed. "Mother, I don't want—" "Take it," Helena insisted, pressing the key into his palm. "For Eleanor, for your future children, so they never have to hide or run or fear their own heritage. Promise me, Sebastian. Promise me you'll take what's yours and use it to choose love over hate." Before Sebastian could respond, the door burst open. Lord Nathaniel Ashford stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 armed men, and his handsome face twisted with triumph and malice as he saw Isolde. "Well, well," Nathaniel sneered, his cold hazel eyes raking over Isolde with contempt. "The whore who destroyed my life and the traitor who stole her. How convenient to find you both in one place." He stepped into the room, his men fanning out behind him. "Lady Isolde, you're coming with me to face justice for your crimes." Sebastian moved instantly, putting himself between Nathaniel and his family. "She committed no crime except being lied to by you, Ashford. You were the one already married. You were the fraud." Nathaniel's face flushed with rage. "She seduced me. She knew about my previous marriage and tried to trap me anyway. The scandal destroyed my reputation, cost me my political appointments, turned me into a laughingstock." Isolde's voice rang out clear and strong despite her fear. "That's a lie, Nathaniel, and you know it. I knew nothing about your wife in Ireland. You hid her existence from everyone, and when the truth came out on our wedding day, you blamed me to save yourself. You threw me from your carriage into the snow and left me to die rather than admit your own guilt." Nathaniel took another step forward, his hand on his sword hilt. "Shut your mouth, you lying—" "That's enough." Sebastian's voice was ice and steel. "You've already tried to murder her once, Ashford. I won't let you do it again." He had no weapon, but his body was coiled and ready, every muscle prepared to fight. Nathaniel laughed, a cruel sound. "You're outnumbered, Thornwell. 5 to 1. You can't protect her." Behind them, Helena Thornwell struggled to sit up in her bed, her voice weak, but carrying the echo of her old authority. "This is still my house, Ashford. You have no right to be here, no right to threaten my son or his family. Leave now, or I'll have you thrown out." Nathaniel barely spared her a glance. "You're dying, old woman. You have no power here anymore." He nodded to his men. "Take the girl. Kill the traitor if he resists." But as the mercenaries moved forward, 2 things happened simultaneously. First, Mrs. Wren, who had been standing quietly by the door, let out a piercing whistle. Suddenly, the hidden passages burst open, and a dozen servants poured out, armed with kitchen knives, fire pokers, and sheer loyalty to Sebastian. They might not have been trained soldiers, but they outnumbered Nathaniel's mercenaries, and they were fighting for someone they loved. Second, little Eleanor, terrified by the shouting and the violence, began to cry. It was a child's frightened wail, pure and heartbreaking, and it cut through the chaos like a knife. Everyone froze for a moment, and in that moment, something shifted in the room. Helena Thornwell, using perhaps the last of her strength, pulled herself fully upright in bed. "Enough!" she commanded, and for a heartbeat she was once again the formidable Dowager Duchess who had ruled Thornwell Hall for decades. "I am the head of this house, and I will not die listening to a child cry in fear because grown men can't let go of their hatred." She fixed Nathaniel with a glare that could have frozen fire. "Lord Ashford, your grievance is with Lady Isolde's supposed deception, but I have here in my possession letters from your wife in Ireland sent to me months ago, begging me to help expose your bigamy. She told me everything. How you married her in secret, then abandoned her when she became pregnant. How you planned to marry Isolde for her family connections while keeping your first wife hidden and penniless." Helena's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I kept those letters, Nathaniel. I kept them because I thought they might be useful someday, and now, dying as I am, I'm giving them to my son. If you touch one hair on Lady Isolde's head, Sebastian will release those letters to every newspaper in England. Your reputation will be destroyed beyond repair." The color drained from Nathaniel's face. "You're bluffing. Helena reached beneath her pillow with a trembling hand and pulled out a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. "Am I?" She handed them to Sebastian. "These are yours now, my son. Use them wisely." Nathaniel stared at the letters, and Sebastian could see the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of revenge against ruin. Finally, with a sound of pure frustration, Nathaniel spat on the floor. "This isn't over, Thornwell, neither of you." He turned to his men. "We're leaving." As quickly as they had come, Nathaniel and his mercenaries retreated, though the malice in his eyes promised this was far from finished. When the door slammed behind them, Sebastian released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He turned to his mother, who had collapsed back against the pillows, her brief surge of strength spent. "Mother, those letters are real," Helena whispered. "Every word. I had them verified." She smiled weakly. "Consider it my final gift to you, leverage against an enemy who won't let go of his hate." She held out her arms to Eleanor, who had stopped crying. "Come here, darling girl. Come say goodbye to your grandmother." Eleanor, with the resilience of childhood, climbed carefully onto the bed and let Helena embrace her. "You be brave, little Eleanor," Helena murmured into the child's dark hair. "You be kind and strong, and never let anyone tell you that love is weakness. Your parents are the strongest people I've ever known because they chose love when the whole world told them to choose hate." She looked at Sebastian and Isolde over Eleanor's head. "Take care of each other. Build something beautiful from the ashes of our ugly past. And forgive me if you can, for not seeing sooner what really mattered." Sebastian moved to the bed, Isolde beside him, and they each took one of Helena's hands. "We forgive you, mother," Sebastian said, his voice thick with tears. "Rest now. You've made your peace." Helena's eyes drifted closed, a small smile on her lips. "I can rest now. Finally I can rest." She died 3 hours later, as the first light of dawn broke over Thornwell Hall. Sebastian was holding her hand when she took her last breath, and for all the pain she had caused, for all the hatred she had nurtured, in the end she had found redemption. She had chosen, at the very last moment, to be a mother instead of a matriarch, to choose love instead of legacy. The funeral was small, attended only by Sebastian, Isolde, Eleanor, Mrs. Wren, and a handful of loyal servants who had served Helena for decades. The rest of the Thornwell family, such as remained, had been scandalized to learn of Helena's will, leaving everything to her disowned son. They contested it naturally, but the will was ironclad, and Sebastian was now the Duke of Thornwell in truth, not just by birth. But standing in the cold cemetery, as his mother was laid to rest beside his father, Sebastian made a decision. He turned to Isolde, who stood beside him with Eleanor in her arms, and spoke clearly enough for all to hear. "I accept the title and the estate, but I'm changing what it means to be a Thornwell. From this day forward, Thornwell Hall will stand for something different. It will stand for reconciliation instead of revenge, for building instead of destroying, and any Ashford who wishes to make peace will find the doors open instead of closed." He looked at Mrs. Wren. "Send letters to the Ashford family. Tell them what my mother did in her final hours. Tell them about the choice she made. And tell them that if they want to end this feud that has destroyed so many lives, I am willing to negotiate a lasting peace." Over the following months, Sebastian's offer was met with skepticism from most of the Ashford clan. But a few, the younger generation, who were tired of the endless cycle of hatred, reached out cautiously. Slowly, carefully, bridges began to be built between the two houses. Thornwell Hall was opened and aired out, the cold Gothic fortress gradually transformed into a home filled with warmth and laughter. Eleanor ran through halls that had once echoed only with duty and rage, her joy infectious. Sebastian and Isolde worked tirelessly to reshape not just the estate, but the legacy it represented. They established schools on Thornwell lands, opened their doors to those in need, regardless of family name, and proved through their actions that love could be stronger than inherited hate. Not everyone approved. Lord Nathaniel Ashford remained a bitter enemy, spreading rumors and making threats. Some of the older Thornwell relatives never forgave Sebastian for what they saw as his betrayal. But Sebastian had learned from his mother's deathbed confession. He had learned that the only legacy worth leaving was one of love, not fear. One quiet evening, almost a year after Helena's death, Sebastian stood in his study at Thornwell Hall, the same room where his father had once planned strategies against the Ashfords. Isolde entered, beautiful, in a simple green dress that matched her eyes, and crossed to stand beside him at the window. Below, in the gardens his mother had kept so austere and cold, Eleanor played with the children of former Ashford and Thornwell servants, their laughter rising on the summer breeze. No one cared whose family they came from. They were just children, playing together in the golden light. "She would be proud, you know," Isolde said softly, taking Sebastian's hand. "Your mother. She'd see what you've built here, how you've changed everything, and she'd be proud." Sebastian pulled Isolde close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. "We built it together. Everything we have, everything we are, we built it together." He turned her to face him, cupping her face in his hands, the way he had that first night in the cottage when they'd admitted their love. "I found you in the snow, Isolde. I chose to save you when everything I'd been taught told me to walk away. And that choice, that one choice to follow my heart instead of my hatred, led to all of this." He gestured to the gardens, to the hall around them, to the life they'd created. "My mother spent her last days understanding what I learned the night I found you. That the greatest betrayal isn't turning your back on your lineage. It's betraying your own heart, betraying the possibility of love because you're too afraid to let go of hate." Isolde smiled, tears glistening in her emerald eyes. "You didn't just save me in the snow that night, Sebastian. You saved yourself too. You saved us both from becoming what our families wanted us to be. And in doing so, you saved future generations from inheriting our pain." Outside, Eleanor called for them, waving enthusiastically, wanting to show them the flower crown she'd made with her friends. Sebastian and Isolde laughed together, the sound free and genuine, and went to join their daughter in the garden. Behind them, Thornwell Hall stood tall against the evening sky, no longer a monument to hatred and feuds, but a testament to the transformative power of love. Years would pass, and the Thornwell-Ashford feud would fade into history, remembered only as a cautionary tale of what happens when pride and vengeance are allowed to destroy reason and compassion. But the story of Duke Sebastian Thornwell and Lady Isolde Ashford would be remembered differently. It would be told as the story of two people who chose each other when the world demanded they choose hate, who built a bridge across a chasm of ancestral rage, who proved that love, real love, was the most powerful force in existence, capable of transforming not just individuals but entire legacies. And every winter, when the first snow fell over the Scottish Highlands and the grounds of Thornwell Hall alike, Sebastian and Isolde would stand together, hands intertwined, and remember. They would remember the night they found each other in the cold, the night that changed everything, the night that proved that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty isn't staying true to the family you were born into. It's staying true to the family you choose to create. That's the legacy they would leave their children, their grandchildren, and all who came after. Not a legacy of hatred passed down like a poisoned inheritance, but a legacy of love earned through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to betray everything except what matters most, each other. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. Leave a like to support our work. Share in the comments what you would do if you were in the character's place. Your opinion might appear in the next video. Would you have saved your enemy like Sebastian did? Would you have trusted someone from a rival family like Isolde? What would you sacrifice for true love? And what did you think of Helena's deathbed redemption? Can years of hatred truly be forgiven in final moments? Tell us your thoughts below, and remember to turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale of passion, drama, and impossible choices. Until next time, dear friends, may you always choose warmth over the cold.